What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. I have English subtitles available, so if you want, you can turn them on down below. The war in Ukraine has not only failed to present a believable rationale. Some would argue it has failed to deliver any coherent purpose whatsoever. Ask any person inside Russia right now, what is the goal of the special military operation? 1/3 would say it is to defeat Nazis. Another third would say it's to prevent NATO from expanding. Others would say it is to protect Russian speakers who live on the territory of Ukraine. And the rest will say it is to destroy American biolaboratories, which develop combat mosquitoes, which will then be used to infect people of Siberia and spread the plague across Russia. Yes, there are people like this too. Nearly 3 years in, the Kremlin still cannot settle on a single credible story. One moment they invoke historical grievances, the next they mutter something about protecting Russia from the West, and then they switch gears to talk on imperial expansion. Political thinkers, self-styled philosophers, and notorious propagandists spin their interpretations literally daily. One day it is this, another day it is that. As a result, all of this leaves everyone wondering, if this campaign truly had an ideological foundation, why does it shift like a quicksand? And why must so many people die on both sides for a cause that nobody can even define? So today, guys, we step into a labyrinth of contradictions guided by voices like Alexander Dugin, Vladislav Surkov, and crucially Vasily Yakimenko. Let's see how these conflicting viewpoints spotlight a government so tangled in its own cynicism that it cannot even come up with a convincing answer to the simplest question of all. Why? From the beginning, the war's logic has been anything but stable. Grand announcements about stopping so-called Nazi threat gave way to vague references to reclaiming land historically tied to Russia. For some reason, in order to expel this group of bad people, Putin needed to invade and capture a fifth of Ukraine, regions of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye and Kherson. Don't know exactly how it would have helped him to push out the followers of Adolf, but well, that's what he decided to do anyways. Just for later to have the most surprised face and ask why everyone hates me and calls me an invader. Soon the official narrative drifted towards more abstract confrontation with NATO, as though fighting the alliance was the real objective all along. But with every shift in tone, the state only revealed how hollow its claims truly were. Enter the pro-war brains of the Putin's era, philosophers, professors and government officials who have tried to forge a new sense of purpose. Their attempts usually involve lofty language, empire this, spiritual revival that, but the more they talk, the clearer it becomes that they have no consensus. One good example is Alexander Dugin, Putin's personal favorite wartime philosopher, who shouts from the rooftops about forging an empire with an iron fist. The same guy whose daughter was allegedly eliminated by Ukrainian special forces, according to the Russian FSB. This was a very unambiguous sign for him to stop doing what he does, but he continued nevertheless, and even intensified his bile spitting. But this time, he became extremely hostile not just towards Ukrainians, but he turned against regular Russian people as well. Just one guy who hates literally everyone around him, except Putin. He insists it will take repression on a colossal scale and the complete annihilation of anyone who dares to challenge the president's cause. To him, bloodshed is necessary fuel, a cruel yet defining feature of empire building. He almost compared modern Russia to ancient Rome, saying that sometimes tough decisions of invasion and desolation are necessary for the better future of all mankind. On the other side, there is Vladislav Surkov, former deputy prime minister of Russia, who surprisingly seems to hint at a partial return to Western alignment. All this while praising Russia's supposed success in making other nations jealous enough to mimic imperial moves. In his mind, the push towards West reopens Peter the Great's fabled window to Europe, as if that outcome is something to celebrate. Probably what he thinks is that if Europe does not want to cooperate with Russia voluntarily, Russia will come, barging its way through the doors of Ukraine and forcing everyone to become its friend. Another very questionable vision, if you ask me. The contradicting visions of Dugin and Surkov exemplify the disarray among the Russian philosophical elite. One sees fresh purges as the only path forward, while the other suggests harnessing the West to Russia's advantage. Both, by the way, are highly regarded by Putin. But neither perspective can hide the glaring truth that the war itself is still missing a core. Empires do not emerge from pure confusion. They require a guiding principle. And if after 3 years the best minds of Putin era still cannot settle on one idea, perhaps there was never any principle to begin with. Quick announcement to my Patreons. Guys, I found another interesting video from the front lines where Ukrainians attached literal shotguns to a drone and started flying around targeting Russians. The wonders of wartime engineering, right? The first time I see something like this, so if you are curious as well, please go ahead and check my most recent post on Patreon. This footage along with 40 more photos and videos is already uploaded. If you guys are still not Patreon members, please consider subscribing, the link is down below. That's a really good way to support our channel because recently YouTube again started putting restrictions on some of my videos. Thanks so much, and now let's continue. In the midst of this ideological confrontation, Russia's political elite hopes that a coherent explanation will materialize literally out of nowhere. They lean on public figures known for extravagant outbursts, as though shock value alone can conjure purpose. You might think these contradictions are a part of a grand strategy, designed to keep observers guessing. But one interview with former youth policy head Vasily Yakimenko blows that theory apart. Yakimenko used to rule over pro-Putin youth movements, teaching them camaraderie among themselves and hatred towards anyone outside of Russian borders. He was doing the same work as Artur Axman. If you never heard about this guy, just Google him. And yes, you guessed it, Putin's youth was also funded by colossal state budgets. His job was straightforward: shape the young generation into loyal defenders of the Kremlin's cause. Yet, he now speaks with a cynicism so blatant, it undermines all grand claims, even his own, about defending Russia's soul or standing up to Western forces. He now admits he never cared about forging a new patriotic order. All of it was really about money and the perks of power. And these are not even quotes taken out of context. He personally admits those things straight to the camera, seemingly even proud of it. That he was able to do something what Putin personally approved, get millions of rubles out of the system, and then quietly retire. But it does not stop here. He then also insists that this self-serving attitude is the norm in the Russian government circles. There are no secret council of like-minded patriots, only a bunch of opportunists and apparatchiks who do what they must to stay afloat. While Alexander Dugin rages about an empire created in blood and honor, and Vladislav Surkov dreams of unexpected geopolitical gambits, Vasily Yakimenko waves a dismissive hand at all of it. He sees countries themselves, including Russia, as abstractions, as illusions, that only matter if they can funnel wealth into the hands of a selected few. In one of his most recent interviews around mid-January, he said, and this is literally his quote, "Today Russia no longer exists. 140 million Russians do not exist either. I see a lamp, it is a physical object, therefore it exists. I cannot look at a country and tell if it's real or not. Russia is just an abstraction." This perspective might look disjointed at first, but it aligns perfectly with the government's inability to present a unified rationale for the war. Because if officials themselves see patriotism as a farce, how can they craft a meaningful cause to rally the nation? This Yakimenko's interview feels like a spotlight turned on the hidden corners of the Kremlin's machinery. Any pretense of serving the greater good is now gone. He laughs at the idea that anyone in the government might be driven by genuine belief. For him, the job of raising ideologically and racially correct youth was a straightforward hustle, nothing more. He was not on a mission to fortify Russian might or challenge Western perspective. He cared only about financial gain, personal comfort, and collecting new conquests, both literal and metaphorical. He even brags about how he suspected all scientists pitching research projects to him, they were also just clever thieves like himself. You might ask, if people of this mindset run the show, then who is actually orchestrating the war for a grand purpose? The honest answer could be no one. Surkov dreams of a triumphant reconnection with Europe. Dugin yells for more crackdowns and even bigger mobilizations. But Yakimenko shrugs, saying he does not even watch these war reports and only wonders if Vladimir Putin might push the nuclear button. If this happens, he notes, nothing else matters anyway. There is a cruel logic in that viewpoint. When key players behind the scenes view the conflict as a mere sideshow or an opportunity to pile up cash, you can forget about hearing any honest pleas for unity. The entire operation becomes a stage set for personal ambition, where nobody invests in the war's moral or historic significance. They invest in themselves. Therefore, the staggering confusion. Multiple rationales swirl around, but none are anchored in principle, because to a cynic, principle does not pay the bills. All this begs the question, how does a nation find its way when its most influential figures are lost in a vortex of contradiction, plain apathy, or pursue egoistic goals? If powerful elites only care about wealth or gaining political advantage, how long before the system breaks under its own emptiness? Yakimenko's revelations suggest it might not be that long. A system built on cynicism rarely stands firm in the face of crisis. When confronted with real pressure, be it on the battlefield, in the economy, or from public discontent, it collapses into frantic deal-making and betrayal. Of course, it does not collapse overnight. Skilled opportunists and masters of adaptation are able to pivot from one government structure to another without even blinking. That means if the tide turns tomorrow, Putin's departure, skyrocketing prices, or catastrophic military losses, these elites will hurry to save themselves, shedding the war's ideology faster than they embraced it. Not a single one of them will come to Putin's aid if they are certain that his case is doomed. Most of them will start talking to the West they hated so much, trying to get themselves sweet deals and get out of jail free cards. And ironically, that's where some sort of hope might arise. Real grassroots movements still exist in Russia, especially on the liberal flank, forging unity around actual values rather than a paycheck. And yes, the state has hammered them into near oblivion with arrests, bans and forced exiles. Yes, they lack prime-time television slots or massive funding, but if a vacuum of power suddenly opens, these people have a very good opportunity at stepping in. While current authorities will be concerned about saving themselves, these are the people who will be left there to pick up the crumbs and build from scratch. For them, politics is not about cheap slogans or illusions of empire. It's about creating something functional and humane, a radically different ambition from the cynical scramble Putin's war minds describe right now. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to see some footage from Ukraine, it's on my Patreon right now. The link is down below. Thanks much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway.